So I have never cold called, ever. To me, the goal was to be able to connect with bankers so that they saw my value and then they would bring clients to me. And how could I nurture that relationship? So that's really how I built my whole practice. And still to this day, I mean, all the clients I have are really from referral sources.
Welcome to Head, a podcast by FS Investments, where we get personal with the people of financial services. I'm Kirsten Pickens.
And I'm Ryan Robertson. We are the co-heads of distribution at FS Investments.
Today, we're excited to welcome Jennifer Garcia, Private Wealth Advisor and Managing Director of the Garcia Private Wealth Group at Wells Fargo. As a private wealth financial advisor with over 25 years of experience, Jen has built her practice around providing guidance to successful individuals, affluent families, and private foundations. In this episode, Jen discusses how she prospects for clients, her unique approach to multi-generational wealth management, and what it means to lead one of the few all-women teams in financial services. So let's get started.
Jen, you've had an amazing career. You've been at Wells Fargo, it's hard to believe, for 25 years. And a lot of times when we start our conversations with top advisors, we just like to ask the question, when did you know that you wanted to be a financial advisor?
That's a good question. But actually, I do know that answer. And when I was young, my mom, whenever we went shopping, she would always pull money out of her wallet. And she had money in different pockets for different reasons. And that always stayed with me. And then when I got older and I was in college, I always worked for brokers. And I felt like this is a perfect career for a woman because you have a lot of flexibility in your schedule. And that's when I decided I wanted to be an advisor.
And you said when you were growing up, you worked with a bunch of different brokers and financial advisors. How did you find those opportunities?
I did through college. I mean, I've worked for option traders. I worked for advisors at Payne Weber, and then I worked for a top producing office at Merrill Lynch. And it was very interesting because when I graduated college, none of them would hire me because I had, no centers of influence and I didn't have a network. So I was turned down.
Big mistake.
Clearly.
Huge mistake.
What movie is that?
Pretty
Big
Woman.
mistake.
Pretty Woman.
Huge, yes.
Huh?
Pretty Woman.
Okay. You guys are good.
So let's keep going on this on Wells Fargo. How long has it been? I mean, when we were talking earlier, is it almost 30 years?
Yeah, so it'll be 29 years that I'm with Wells Fargo.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so what is it about Wells that you've been there for such a long period of time that makes you stay there?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm just a loyal person. I'll stay with the same dry cleaner. Maybe I just don't like change in that regard. But no, in all seriousness, I've just liked the vision that Wells Fargo has had. Really, it's just the connection you have with people. And then also, I just think as a working mom, in my head, I couldn't even get my arms around like picking up and starting over again when I was so well established. So fortunately, I'm glad I stayed. I think it's a great institution. So
that's awesome.
I've heard and read that you have an all-female team, all females on the team. Can you tell us a little bit about the team and why you've constructed it like that, or why you've decided to go down the path of all women on the team?
Yeah, I know. It seems so unusual, actually, to have an all-women's team, but initially, I really just was a sole practitioner, and then one of my sales associates, I could just see that she needed more. And so she kept kind of nurturing the collegiate path. So she's a certified financial planner like I am. And so with that, I said, your talents are not being utilized as a CA. So she now is on my team as a consultant, and so she really deals with my next generation and also like the lower end of my book. And she's also a planner like me. And then my next associate that came on board, I saw again that there was just more she could do. And so she now is my analyst. And then the last associate I brought on was actually someone who used to babysit my kids.
That's so cool.
And she would pick up my kids from school, and I would come home from work, and she would just see me dressed up, and she just wanted to know what I did. And so she kind of followed in my footsteps. And so now she's also on my team. She's my associate. And so it kind of happened organically, to answer your question. But through that, I just feel that I have been able to empower women and kind of see a path for them. And to me, that's just all about paying it forward. So I just feel that I'm very fortunate. And so for me to be able to help women, especially in this industry, is like the icing, on the cake, or the whatever, the cherry on the top, in addition to working with clients.
So why doesn't the industry have more women in it? We Kirsten and I started this podcast for lots of different reasons, but one of the reasons was we both have young daughters who are in college, and Kirsten's daughter as well is interested in finance, and we've been talking to them both about maybe becoming a financial advisor one day. But there are very few females in the industry, and I think it's improved over the decades or so, but it's still a very small percentage. Why is that?
Part of me feels like it still is like the old boys club. And a lot of those connections are on the golf course. And we're just excluded from that, unless we play golf, which I don't, but I do have clubs.
We're going to go play.
Yeah, okay, perfect. For sure, we're going to do that. So I just think, I don't know, maybe there's an intimidation. So, yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, this is such an incredible industry for women. And I know it's a passion of yours. You just said it. I mean, you've been empowering women since very early age, since you first came into the business. You've got an all-female team. And I mean, I know you feel like this. I feel this way. This industry is such a great place for a working mom. It's such a great place for females in general to thrive. I'm curious, what are some of the things that you do? Because I know you have a lot of female clients and you're very passionate about this. What are some of the things that you do to try to help bring more women into the industry?
It's interesting because I haven't had an opportunity to really talk to, let's say, college students. I feel that advisors come to me like just to be a mentor. So I don't know. I think I really need to get out there more and kind of spread the word, because I do think you're right. I think women, again, this is all about a relationship and communication. That's what we were, talking about earlier today. And I feel that that's really where women excel. So I'm really not sure.
Well, to that point, as we were talking earlier, all of the lunches that you do and these families, multi-generational families that you've cultivated incredible relationships with, of the daughters or younger generation girls that see what you do for their families, has anyone said, this is really cool? Or like your babysitter, have you seen anything like that?
Just my babysitter.
Just your babysitter. See, that goes right to our point.
Yeah.
I mean, we interview so many people for sales roles, and we have very few women that come in for those interviews.
It's interesting. And also I feel like I deal in the higher net worth space, and so a lot of that next gen, sometimes they're entitled, sometimes they're not working themselves. So I think they see me in a different light. Like I'm there to help them, not them saying, ooh, I think I'd like to do this.
Actually. Yeah.
And maybe that's just because of the type of clients that I'm working with. So
You have two boys in college. Do they have any interest to be in the business, and maybe they could be, break that glass ceiling, or is it different?
Well, clearly they wouldn't be able to be on my team.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
I'm teasing. So I do have one. Yeah. He'll be my little mascot. Yeah. So yeah, actually my younger son is interested in finance, but honestly, I don't want to pigeonhole him into it. So I've told him, explore everything that has to do with business, and you might find a passion. And I feel fortunate enough to know so many people in the industry that if he did obviously want to come into, this side of the industry, that I could introduce him to people.
So we talked a little bit about your team and, how you've developed it organically over the years. You've been at Wells for a very long time. You're incredibly successful. How do you think you and your team separate yourself in this sea of sameness? Like, what differentiates your team from all the other advisors that maybe you compete against?
Honestly, I do think that women have a different touch. And I think that everybody on my team, when they're talking to clients, they feel the connectiveness that we have, or the connectivity that we have as a team. And there's just a lot of synergy there. So I do think that resonates. I just think that it's very powerful. And also, if we're dealing with, let's say it's a couple, right? A married couple. Most of the time, I'm going to be dealing with the patriarch. And to be able to nurture the matriarch separately, I just think women do a really good job of that. And so I do try to have individual meetings with just the spouse. Like, this is all about you. I want to hear what's important to you. I'll do women events so that there's a bond that they have with me, because I just want to make sure that they feel comfortable enough and heard. And I don't want them also to feel threatened that I have a close relationship with their spouse.
So smart.
So that it's a fine line. So I really separate that, and I feel like my team does a great job of that too when she calls on the phone. So I will just say, because I just want to point out too that I think that a lot of times men don't want to talk to other men about issues they have. And I do feel that they feel more comfortable talking to a woman. And they can share things, maybe struggles that they're having that they don't really want to share with their wife yet. They need somebody like to bounce ideas off of. So I think that's another benefit of just being a woman advisor.
That's really, really smart to do, because so many, spouses do feel threatened by those types of relationships likely. So you're leveling the playing field. That's great to hear. Maybe pivoting for a second. I heard a phrase earlier that it's so important to learn and then listen and then leverage. And you are a huge learner. You're constantly trying to up your game. And I wanted to dive into a couple of those things. You obviously have your CFP, but you also received accreditation with a domestic partner advisor. And you also have your sports and entertainment wealth management advisor. Can you talk about those things and just your passion for learning and growing your skill set?
Even though I've been in this business for 29 years, I just feel like there's so much to learn. Totally. And I feel like if you're not learning, you're obsolete. And sometimes I don't really have like a vision of where I want to be. I just feel, again, that sometimes situations happen, and it does force me to take a step back and say, oh gosh, this is something that really would make sense for me to do. So I feel like the learning will continue.
Yeah.
And designations too, which I think
some
are
of those
important.
designations, are they driven by types of clients that you want to go after, or types of clients that you already have that you think will help facilitate conversation differently?
Yeah, good question. So a CFP, just being a planner, I think having that designation should be like bare minimum. Yes. That's really what we're doing. To me, it's creating a visual roadmap for a client, right? So money is an intangible. So how can I put that to paper to make somebody feel comfortable? So from there, at the time I got my accredited domestic partnership advisor designation. That's a lot of words. That was before same-sex marriages. Oh, okay. So that was really important back then, that I can kind of talk through structures and really help somebody plan, right, if they weren't married. And then the last designation really came about. You're right. I do actually have a lot of entertainment-based clients, but also I work with some divorce attorneys. And so a lot of them are dealing with sports figures. And so that area, it's very similar, sports and entertainment. So if you're doing a movie in a lot of different, states or cities, there's going to be certain taxes associated with that. Just like if you're playing sports all over the country, there's going to be a tax in every state that you're playing in. So it just made sense. I'm based in Los Angeles, so I have a lot of clients in that realm.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Kirsten touched on this for a second, but when you think about the designations, how do you prospect? How do you grow your businesses? Are you, cold calling still, or how at this point do you take a really big practice and continue to make it bigger?
It's so interesting because I feel that my process has been very different. So I have never cold called, ever. Ever. So really, to me, the goal was to be able to connect with bankers so that they saw my value and then they would bring clients to me. And how could I nurture that relationship? And so Wells Fargo has a private bank. And so there was one that was opened up in my area. I guess this was like 18 years ago. And they said, well, you head up this office. And so really there were bankers there too. And they needed me the same way that these bankers and branches needed me. And so it was very easy to forge that connection. But what was interesting is that all the bankers I worked with really were men. So I felt, again, that combination of, a man and woman kind of resonated together. And through that, they would have the relationship and decide to bring me in. So that's really how I built my whole practice. And still to this day, I mean, all the clients I have are really from referral sources within the bank and within, obviously, the CPAs or estate planning attorneys that I work with now.
And do you find at this point in your career that you are asking your clients for referrals, or do your clients naturally just call you with referrals?
I have never asked. I'm not good at that. I have gotten referrals from clients, of course, but no, I don't know why I'm not comfortable asking.
I think it speaks to the job that you do, right?
Yeah.
So clearly your clients are comfortable and happy and successful with working with you, and they want their friends and family to experience that. I think it's
You
a
haven't had
huge
to.
credit.
Yeah, I
That's
have
the
not
thing, you
had
haven't
to.
had to do that because they've come to you naturally.
Yeah, and really at this stage in my career, it's like, the relationships that I have are very complex. And so those relationships take a lot of time. You need an infrastructure in place to really do the best job. And so there are less of those out there, right? So to me at this stage, it's more about, I want there to be a connection, right? Because I'm going to be spending a lot of time with you. And so, that's a two-way street.
Sure.
Absolutely. You touched on this a little bit, but one of your passions is just clearly the wealth transfer, right? Multi-generational wealth and taking the time to spend with individuals of the families that you manage. So you talked about having annual lunches. Can you dive into that a little bit more and talk about why that's such an important thing for you?
So I really feel that this transfer of wealth, roughly, $60 trillion over the next 20 years is so impactful. And are we really doing a good job of getting to know that next generation? Because to me, I guess it's more about fear that next generation is going to say, hey, you're not up to speed with, technology today, and we can do this on our own. And so I've just made such a conscious effort to get to know families. And I think the easiest way to do that is to schedule a family lunch. And really it's telling my clients that, look, I want your kids to know who I am. I want them to know that I'm a resource to them. It's an extension, right? This is an extension of what I do. And then at the same time, I know, and especially the matriarch is like, I feel good. Now my kids have somebody, right? If something happened to me, they're going to go to Jen, and and they're going to be
At least they
fine.
know where to go.
So
Like they
great.
have
They
a
know where
phone
to
call to
go.
make.
Yeah,
Like,
they know
Yeah.
you well.
And what I really try to say too, when it gets to the point that I'm talking to them individually, is I'm your confidant. You can talk to me about anything. This is a safe place. And I think that resonates with them. I feel like that's the one thing I can give them that isn't technology or a hot stock tip. It's I'm here for you, and it's just amazing what comes out of those conversations. And I have to say, it is so rewarding, like to see this next generation and how impactful you can be.
That's so cool. I don't know
I'm
where
not
I
gonna
heard
cry,
this.
but-
Don't. Because then we'll start.
Yeah,
Before.
we'll be crying.
I don't know where I heard this, but it was a statistic that so few advisors actually do talk to their kids. So like clients will leave their advisor, and the number one reason that they leave their advisor is because that advisor never talked or built a relationship with their child. And so you have a leg up because you do that already. I think that's awesome.
And I think women just do that naturally.
Yeah.
That's just right, especially if you're a mother. We're just kind of nurturing that way. And to me, again, it's, last year I was invited to my client's daughter's wedding in Ireland, and they were like, you have to be there. And she goes, you've helped me with this whole transition. Like, you were such a big part of that. So to me, that's like a win-win.
That's very
right?
rewarding. Had to
And
been.
yeah.
you went?
Of course.
Wow, what a treat.
Yes. For 3
an
whole
advisor.
days.
3 days,
Yeah,
yeah,
3
no doubt.
days. I was
That's
there.
a commitment.
But you know what? All the kids were there. And again, I've had a family lunch with this family, so I know all of them, I don't want to say intimately, but I know them all
Yeah.
very well as individuals. And I just know years from now they're going to be like, remember at Sabrina's wedding when this happened? Like, I want to be a part of those
absolutely.
memories.
It's a no-brainer.
That is
It
so
really
absolutely
is.
great.
Yeah.
You said a word a second ago about your clients' complexity. What does, for higher net worth clients, complexity look like? So what are you dealing with on a daily basis? Or maybe a better question would be, what do you think the high net worth client struggles with the most?
Oh my gosh, a lot. But a lot of it has to do with family dynamics. So especially if there are some kids that, their children that are just not engaged, that are kind of coming across a little bit more entitled. Like, how do you neutralize that? How does each family member feel about their relationship with money? And so we at Wells Fargo, we do have a family dynamics team, and they actually come out. They interview everybody in the family. It could be in-laws, so it's very expansive. And through that, we'll do some education. But what I hear from parents is different from what I hear from the kids. And that's probably the most fascinating part.
In what way?
So parents will say, these kids just feel like, they're entitled. Why do they not want to do these simple tasks just so they could get introduced to what we've created? And then the kids will say, they want me to do this, but I did this. And so it's you're kind of working with different generations and trying to be respectful of both, but somehow bring them together.
Yeah.
So that everybody,
mediator.
which I love, because again, it's so deep, and what happens is you're just forming really strong bonds with everybody in the family. So
I'm just curious, because all that it's a skill to, first of all, you have to be an incredible communicator. I agree, women are, but to do that well takes sometimes training too. Do you work with a personal coach? Do you do anything to constantly get the right skill set to work with different generations and be able to mediate in those scenarios? Because I know in those high net worth clients, it could be very challenging. Or is it just all innate and natural?
I probably need a coach. No, I don't have one. But you know what? When I started in this business, actually I started at a mutual fund company because, again, nobody would hire me. And the mutual fund company that I work for, they were no load. So really it was all about educating, right? Like, all I can do is educate you on this for you to make the best decision. And I really feel that that's what I took with my practice, like at Wells Fargo. So I always say to a client, if I educate you, then at least you know what the options are. I'm not just telling you this is what you're going to do. Like, you need to be a part of the process. And so I feel that I'm a good listener. So I might not have the answers, but sometimes you don't need the answers. Right. You just need to be a good listener.
But you did say, just during this conversation, not to pigeonhole and compare men versus women, but you're talking a lot about educating and maybe even teaching clients or prospects sort of about what you do. Whereas I think the mantra or the reputation of men sometimes is that they're telling clients and they're telling prospects what they're going to do. Like, here's what we're going to invest in. Here's how we do it. This is our process. Take it or leave it. And you're coming at it from a much different angle.
Yeah. And
I don't know if there was a question there. It was more of an observation.
You're right. And I think in the beginning that wasn't intentional. I just think when you look at it as a whole, it seems pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are some clients that need to be told.
Yeah.
Right? So there's so many clients out there. I think it really is what fits best for you. And I think that, for me, I just want to continue learning. How can I be a better advisor? So that's what I love about what I do. It's like you can really create this business and pivot as well.
So speaking of pivot, what do you do for fun? Do you have any hobbies that you love to do outside of business?
Yeah, I do.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I'm an avid reader, so I love reading. Don't ask me what I'm currently reading because I think it's John Grisham, but I don't know which book because I love
John Grisham.
Do you?
Yes,
okay,
I've
we'll
read
have to talk about that.
Really?
Really?
Yes.
So I read.
It's the only book series I read. So other than that, I'm very siloed into John Grisham, so we can't branch out from that. But keep going.
Good to know. So I hike. I'm an empty nester now, so I feel like I've really just embraced my friendships, my girlfriends, and being able to have time to really build out those relationships that I feel like I've ignored, for so many years. So I do a lot of hiking and then Pilates, yoga, meditating, things like that. Work-life balance. So bringing that back into the fold.
Do you meditate every day?
No. I'd like to say that I do, but I do not. No.
It's a practice I have not started. I need to.
It's a commitment.
It is.
Yeah,
that's great.
Where do you think as a learner, as somebody who's always trying, a designation, where does your business go from here? What is sort of the next horizon that you see yourself sort of jumping into? And not to lead the witness, but like, is AI something that you've started to investigate? Is that going to be a part of your practice and efficiencies? I'm just curious what you think is next for the team.
Okay.
And add on to that, how since you have a multi-generational team, how you leverage your younger individuals on the team to kind of focus on that too.
Yeah, good question. I will just say that earlier today, somebody asked me about AI, and I mentioned that we're bringing in all of this new technology, and she meant alternative investments versus artificial
That's
intelligence.
What we think of when we say AI.
So it's, yeah.
I should have clarified.
That's okay.
Yes.
The context was correct. Yes. I think for me, it's really deciding what my business succession plan will be. Because I feel like I know I want to do this for a much longer period of time. But how do you really put that in place? And at what period of time do you do that? Where maybe I step away and I'm doing more in-person lunches. That takes a lot of time. So that's something I'm still investigating. I do have a multi-generational practice. So I've got somebody in her 20s, somebody that just turned 40. So I have nobody in their 30s right now. I got to fill that slot, 40s, and then I'm in my 50s. So technology, I think, is something that we can all leverage so that we can spend more time with clients. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I feel that you have to embrace it. I mean, that's technology. And if you don't, you're going to be like kind of left in the cold. So everything that I see feels like it'll be an enhancement to what I'm able to do. So I don't feel like it's a threat and that clients aren't going to need that personal touch. In fact, I think they need that even more.
Agreed.
Right? How many times are you calling for anything today?
Right.
And how hard is it to get a person? And people just want
when I can't get a person.
Yeah, and you just want to connect. You want to
do.
hear that personal voice, even though AI could be a personal voice.
Yeah, well.
To some degree. But so continuing to, I think, introduce new people to my team. I do have an associate that years ago, before we really had this teaming approach, she wanted to become a financial advisor. And so I gave her a portion of my book. And she's so successful. And now she's like, I would love to be on the Garcia Private Wealth, group. And I'm like, really? I was very surprised. I thought she really just wanted to be independent. So that's something we talk about. But I just feel that everything happens at the right time. So I try to keep a really open mind.
Yeah.
And like I said, everything happens really organically. I feel like
Perfect.
for my practice.
That's great. Well, like earlier, we could just keep talking, but we have to wrap up, and we have to wrap up with our favorite question, because we end every podcast with the same question, which is, if you were to ask your 20-year-old self anything and give yourself advice, what would that advice be?
Okay. For me, it would be find a mentor. Find somebody that you respect in the industry. I feel like I learned the hard way. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I really feel like you can better it and you can make it your own. So that would be my advice.
Great advice. Very good advice.
Jen, thank you so much for a fascinating conversation and being on Head to Head. That was great.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
To get the latest episodes as soon as they're available, be sure to subscribe to the Fireside Podcast.
For more on this episode, visit www.fsinvestments.com/head-to-head. This episode was edited and engineered by Aaron Sherman. Video was produced by Melissa Venditti and copy provided by Harrison Beck. Special thanks to show coordinators Laura Coleman and Ellie Zhang. Thanks for listening.